And of course, we're gearing up for the rematch, Ravens-Steelers. And it's simple, right? If the Steelers win, they take the division. If the Ravens win, well, another chance towards increasing their chances of taking the division. And as you tweeted out, Baltimore clinches a playoff berth. Just we're talking about postseason in general. Let's put the AFC North aside for a second. This weekend with winning or tying, and 2, a Dolphins loss or tie, and a Colts loss or tie. So 2 scenarios where they can clinch a playoff berth this weekend. Winning or tying against Pittsburgh, and then the other 2, which could be one or the other.
Yep.
Yeah. Or it has to be both. It has to be a Dolphins loss or a tie on top of the Ravens win, plus a Colts loss or tie.
No, it's either Baltimore clinches a playoff berth by winning or tying, period. But they could, even if they lose, they could still get a playoff berth with a Miami loss and an Indianapolis loss.
All right, so you need one or the other. I got it. So it could be one or the other. I got you.
Correct. Now, if you want to talk about the AFC North odds, currently the Steelers have a 71% chance of winning the AFC North. Obviously, if they win on Saturday, then they clinch it. 100%, it's theirs. But if they lose and the Ravens win, then their chances go down to 56%. They'd still have to lose another, and the Ravens still win 2 more. So those are what the odds are going into this game. And if you think that it's putting stress on one Zay Flowers, knowing the magnitude of this game, knowing that the Steelers have won 8 of the last 9, do you think he's stressed out? Nah, he's not feeling that.
I think we always have, I feel like, turnovers, missed kicks, like stuff like that during the game. So if we eliminate those, and because we move the ball downfield, I know you see that, right? We move the ball downfield, we get across the 50, you know what I'm saying? So, we just got to take care of the ball, make kicks, and try to put the ball in the end zone.
What do they do that's you've obviously only played him twice, and you had 7 catches, I think, on 17 targets, and 1 touchdown in there. What did they do that stresses you, that's difficult for you or for receivers in general?
They don't really do nothing that really stresses me, if I'm being honest. It just, you have some games, and it ended up being that game, so we'll figure it out when we get there. This week we got them, so I'm looking forward to that.
Was there more?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Team meeting today is fiery. Does it feel different, the Steelers, because it's the Steelers?
Of course, because it's a rival. It's a rival. It's always going to be like that no matter what team got a rival, what rivalry it is. If you got a rival in your division and you ain't going to go out there and want to play soft, you got to make sure everybody fired up and ready to go, make sure everybody got their minds on right, their head locked in. So it's always going to be like that.
So, yeah, a little bit of everything in that clip. 3 different answers to 3 different questions. But again, you heard Brian Wacker try to ask him, hey, what do the Steelers do that stresses you, that's difficult for you? And he interjected, he's like, nothing. They don't really do nothing that stresses me, if I'm being honest. And Sarah, you got that mean mugging look on his face, right?
Yeah.
Well, here are the numbers in 2 career games against Pittsburgh. 7 receptions on 17 targets, 112 yards receiving. And he did score a touchdown the first time these 2 teams met last month in November. One thing that Pittsburgh has done really well over the years, not just contain Lamar, but contain Mark Andrews. Sarah, he has not scored a touchdown in 10 career games. So, look, 7 catches on 17 receptions, not the best, not the best percentage-wise. Zay's going to have a big game here, and he's talking very, very confidently, maybe even providing just the slightest bit of bulletin board material.
Well, talk your talk, Zay. And if they want to put more attention on Zay, then that'll open things up for Mark, right? And so if they put all of their attention on Mark, which is both what the Steelers and Chiefs do, then that means Zay is going to have to come up in a big way, along with big play bait. We could use a couple of those, and Isaiah Likely. So that's great. They're not stressing him out, so he's got to come up big. Now, meanwhile, the other person that obviously has to come up big is Lamar Jackson. He was asked earlier this week about if it bothers him about his record against the Steelers. And he's like, well, losing in general bothers me. And the folks on Get Up this morning, they were talking about how the Steelers have had the Ravens number and why they think they need that Lamar needs a massive game.
I think for me, if the Ravens have underperformed to what we've expected and the Steelers have outperformed our expectations, Lamar Jackson they have to win this game. If you talk about how great a season it is, it's all this, you got to go beat the Steelers. You're 1-4 against the Steelers. We talk about pressure games and playoffs. This is a playoff game. They better look at it that way because they have underwhelmed everybody this season.
It does feel like there's a lot of pressure on them to put themselves in position to have a chance at this division.
Right.
And there's a lot of pressure on Lamar in this situation because this is the story about Lamar so far. It's like he's the best version we've ever seen. His numbers this year are insane, but the story is you can't do it against the Steelers. So This is a chance for him to do it. And they stopped him by blitzing. They stopped him by not blitzing. They seem to have his number in some way or another.
Bobby, is it possible for these guys to both be true and also a little dramatic? Right? Like, for sure, I mean, the 1-4 record of Lamar against the Steelers isn't great. And it's not like we've seen him do to the Steelers what we watched him do against the Giants or, any of those other Jackson 5s that he's put up. But we also shouldn't have those expectations against the Steelers. Like, this is an in-division rivalry. But I also think it's slightly dramatic because, but true at the same time, because Lamar hasn't played great. But also, let's not forget Kyle P. Barber, he outlined it very well. Lamar Jackson has only played the Steelers at home once. So you go back to the beginning of his rookie year. In 2018, he didn't start at home against the Steelers. In 2019, doesn't count because it was week 18 and the Ravens already secured the number 1 spot. In 2020, there was a 4-point loss. That was the COVID year. And didn't they play? Wasn't that a week they played on Wednesday too? Was that the game that they ended up having to play Wednesday because of COVID?
That rings a bell.
I wonder if that's what it was. I don't know if somebody in the chat can look that up for us. Anyway, 2021 and 2022, he's obviously injured. Then 2023, again, week 18, the number 1 seed was already secured, so it didn't count. So he's had 1 home game against them. And so he's gone over to the Steelers, a tough place to play. Usually you split with your rival at home and away. And so it's true. I'm not trying to say he has played well against them. I don't think he has. But at the same time, I want to see him at home and ready to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look back at this first game they played in November that I referenced a minute ago. The Ravens, that was exhibit A of a game that they beat themselves. 12 penalties. The first time these two teams played. It was exhibit A. Yeah, 18-16 was the final. Steelers didn't even put forth 1 touchdown. It took 6 Chris Boswell field goals to get it done. Right? Justin Tucker had a rough day. The Ravens were penalized 12 times for 80 yards. They were absolutely dominated in time of possession, losing that battle by nearly 13 minutes. They were 4 for 11 on 3rd down. I mean, just 3 turnovers. Lamar played poorly. Justin played poorly. Now, I don't think that's been the case throughout all 5 of these games that Lamar's played in where he has a 1-4 record. Mm-hmm. But certainly coming off this week 11 matchup last month, it definitely was.
And I will say this. Okay, given what you pointed out with the first game this season in Pittsburgh with the penalties and obviously Justin Tucker missing 2 field goals in a 2-point loss. Okay. It has a massive impact. And here's the reality of the situation. It's unfair, but this is the reality. Lamar Jackson needs to play so well that he doesn't even put Justin Tucker in the conversation this week. Like, that's going to have to be the reality. I don't know if Justin has bounced back. Maybe he has. But last week against the Giants, way easier to do against the Giants than the Steelers. He didn't even give Justin the chance to show that he's bounced back from the bye. And so Justin went out there and he kicked 5 extra points, which is good because he's missed some extra points. But if you want to beat the Steelers, what these guys on Get Up were saying is right, is like, it is a lot of pressure, not on just the Ravens, but it is on Lamar because nobody's going to give him the excuses. Like, they're just saying he's 1-4, right? They're not saying, well, Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals in a 2-point game. So that's the reality of the situation. The other reality of the situation is that I right now feel way more confident in Lamar than I do in Justin Tucker. So not only does Lamar need to think this way, but John Harbaugh and Todd Monken needs to think this way. This cannot be a field goal game. You cannot view this as a field goal game. You cannot view this this cannot be where you guys are within one score of each other heading into the fourth quarter. You can't do that because the Steelers, that's their formula. It's we're not going to make any mistakes. We're going to keep it close, and we're just going to pounce whenever you make the mistake. The Ravens will make mistakes because they're mistake prone this year with all those penalties. So you've got to think touchdown, 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 and take field goals out of the equation. And that's a lot of pressure on Lamar. I understand that that's asking a lot of him, and I understand that that's not fair to ask that of him. But that's the reality of the situation. That's the strategy that they have to go in order to beat the Steelers and keep the AFC North division hopes alive.
Well, at the end of the day, too, from a national perspective, they're going to vote for right or for wrong. They're going to focus on the macro part of this discussion when it comes to Lamar's struggles, right? We're going to focus on the micro here, like I just rattled off, and you ripped off the Justin details, and I ripped off all the self-inflicted details from that Week 11 loss. And so, again, if that's how it's going to be, then to your point, Lamar has to keep this within control. He has to be the reason why this goes the opposite way and why they keep Pittsburgh, at least for another week, away from winning this AFC North. One thing that's for sure as well, there is a heightened sense of urgency. Just ask the longest tenured defensive player. It's Steelers week.
Game at some point this week after practice, but that's got to be the message. I feel like in the past there's been a lot more talk about it. Defensive meeting today was a little fiery. Team meeting was a little fiery, but it's just going to build this week, and it'll get talked about it. I think some people got a taste of it. It's a couple skirmishes in the last game, but no, this is big. This means a lot to a lot of people. It means a lot to me being here for a long time, and if you don't understand, the message will be very clear as the week goes on.
If you don't understand, the message will be very clear as the week goes on. Sarah, this is a team that has lost 4 straight to its rival and 8 of the last 9. The longest tenured defensive player is Marlon Humphrey on this team, and you can bet that he will be highly vocal throughout the next several days in preparation.
Good. I'm glad that they had a fiery meeting. I'm glad of it. I want to hear it. I want them to be ticked. I want them to have so much motivation. I want them going in wanting to prove a point while also being loose. Like, don't let them come into Baltimore and bully you around. This is not happening. Okay. Go out there and take the game out of their hands by score. And here's the other thing. Speaking of Marlon Humphrey and the defense, here's what the Ravens do have going for them. And it is an improved defense. And how did that happen? This was a great quote yesterday, Bobby. Marlon Humphrey was talking about how they've been able to turn things around. And he's like, but if I had to rank them, he's like, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things we've changed. And we've talked about them from, Tre'Davious White getting more snaps on outside corner instead of Stevens. We've talked about Ardarius Washington taking over for Williams. We've talked about Dean Pease coming in. We've talked about how they've changed how they do their film watching. They do it as a group now rather than it being siloed off for different position groups. And I believe Bobby's going to go get a package from Amazon that is at the doorstep, and it is actually some equipment for his sound equipment. So he's going to go get that. But if he had to rank all of those things, what's had the biggest improvement, their biggest impact on the defense's improvement, Marlon Humphrey points to Kyle Hamilton. Listen to this.
Just pinpoint one thing, I would say it's putting Kyle back there at safety. There's been he's just, that guy's just different. His play, obviously you guys see the play, but the communication, getting guys right. There's plays that I'm on the field, I get the call, ask Kyle, what do I do in this call? I hear Kyle give somebody else, what do they do in this call? And so he's just as good as a football player is, his smarts, how he keeps the guys calm. He's just a piece you can put in any position, but him going back to safety has seemed to really stabilize everybody else in all their spots, whether it's corners, the community of nickel, community of the backers.
Rose doing so much, giving the front and everything, but I think Kyle's been able to just help us stabilize in the secondary. And to me, that's kind of been the big thing on the back end. And in the pass rush, those guys, they've come alive as well. A little bit more, kind of cage rush type deals and letting guys win their one-on-one. So it's been really a group effort to get things right. So not trying to give Kyle all the credit, but he deserves a big amount for sure.
Man, whenever this guy's paid, it's not going to be enough. Whenever he gets paid, it's not going to be enough. Marlon says that guy's just different. Him going back to safety has seemed to really stabilize everybody else in all their spots. I'm not trying to give all the credit to Kyle, but he deserves a big amount for sure. What about Coach Gruden weighing in on number 14?
You use Kyle Hamilton, number 14, creatively. I love Hamilton. He's a hell of a safety. He's a dynamic nickel corner. When they want to have a big nickel out there, he can walk in there and play linebacker in their dime package. He will knock you senseless. He's got great ability in space. He can cover.
Fired up. Yeah,
he's so good. He's so good. But going back to the Marlon clip, my favorite part of that was he's like, I've heard guys go over to Kyle and be like, what is this? What do I do there? What do I do? And so it's not just that he's physically dominating on the field, which he is, and he's everywhere, and you just love the way he plays. But the fact that he's now smart enough to just make sure the back end is everywhere where it's supposed to be. And what's funny is I partly attributed to less communication breakdowns because Ardarius Washington filled in for Williams, and maybe that's still part of it. But according to Marlon, it's nah, the biggest is that Kyle's getting everybody where they need to be. And I love that they have that for the back end, and on the front end, they have Roquan Smith. Because who was it earlier this year? There was an opponent that was man, number 0 just kept calling out our plays. He just kept calling out our plays. I can't remember.
Philly, Lane Johnson, maybe.
Okay.
I think it was related to Philly. Yeah.
And speaking of Roquan, real quick, and maybe we'll have time tomorrow. We just had so much content today. If you watched Hard Knocks last night, Roquan was the star for the Ravens. He was the star. They followed him around. He had they talked with him in his car, and that's where he gave some of his classic Roquan talking. You know what, in his car, completely unafraid. And then, of course, in the game, he was annihilating people. He's trouncing on people and just enveloping them. Bobby, did you ever watch Beastmaster?
No.
No, okay, that might have been before your time. I'm just envisioning the beasts coming in and just enveloping people, and that was Roquan Smith. He's just jumping. He's like a WWE guy coming off the ropes, tackling people. So it's so good to know that you got Roquan who can keep the front 7 together, and then you've got Kyle who can keep the back end together, and those two guys can communicate with each other.